as always, amazing to see some new faces and amazing to see some faces that are very familiar. It's always a really beautiful mix of folks who come. So I'm excited.
I think as we continue to let people trickle in, I'm just going to take this moment to introduce myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Ariel. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I help out with PR and social media with TMS, and I'm also just a TMS team member, just here living it up with this amazing company. My people are from Poland and Mexico, so I consider myself to be mixed and Latina. I am an actor and an artist. I am in Chicago currently, so I want to just name that Chicago is located on the traditional unceded homelands of the Council of Three Fires, so the Ojibwa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations. However, many other tribes such as Miami, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sac, and Fox also called the Chicagoland area home. So I just want to name them, honor them. And Lily, if you'd want to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Lily Alice Walker Stiefel. I'm the founder here at The Mixed Space. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently in Berlin. And when I'm not in Germany, I live in Manhattan in New York City, and that is on Lenape land. I'm a Leo. I identify as Black and mixed. My people are from Germany, from Ireland, New Orleans, Honduras. They're Creole, Native, and from the larger African diaspora. I actually have a tradition myself of naming my matriarchal line, and then I also name other names because my matriarchal line doesn't actually reflect who I consider where I come from, but I say that I am the daughter of Linda, who is the daughter of Peg or Margaret, but I actually called her Nani, and she's the daughter of Florence. And I want to honor Gail Cabral and Carol Walker and Kim and my auntie Carla. So if there's any ancestors or folks y'all want to name that are part of your work and part are here with you, I encourage you to do that. And I'm also just going to start to introduce us to the meetup topic here today. So we actually want to show a short video to get us framed into where we want to start and to bring you on a journey of our meetup topic here today. So thank you so much. Let's play it.
I'm really especially happy that I'm chosen to present this particular plaque. To me, it seems more than just a plaque of gold. It opens the doors of this room, moves back the walls, and enables us to embrace the whole of America. An America that we love. An America that, almost alone in the world today, recognizes and pays tribute to those who give of their best, regardless of creed, race, or color. It is with the knowledge that this entire nation will stand and salute the presentation of this plaque that I present the Academy Award for the best performance of an actress in supporting roles during 1939 to Hattie McDaniel.
Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science, fellow members of the motion picture industry, and honored guests. This is one of the happiest moments of my life. And I want to thank each one of you who had a part in selecting me for one of the awards. For your kindness, it has made me feel very, very humble. And I shall always hold it as a beacon for anything that I may be able to do in the future. I sincerely hope I shall always be a credit to my race and to the motion picture industry. My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel. And may I say thank you, and God bless you.
So when Hattie McDaniel accepted her first award, or her award for Best Supporting Actress in Gone with the Wind in 1939, she was the first Black person to win an Oscar. And she almost couldn't even attend the event and had to sit at a separate table to the side of the room, apart from her white co-stars. And as we look at the contributions of Black talent throughout the years, it brings to mind a Netflix miniseries called They've Gotta Have Us. I'm putting the link in the chat. And this docuseries documents the rise of Black talent as we have gone from being a backdrop to literally calling the shots. So I highly recommend watching the show and to learn more about Black life, on both sides of the lens. It starts at Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, and also highlights present day geniuses that we are all experiencing today. The Mixed Space is a community organization that facilitates robust discussion and involves folks' experiences from all over the world. And so as we think about media and representation, I also want to acknowledge Lin-Manuel Miranda's In the Heights that came out this year. And, that show was created as as an opportunity to celebrate the Latinx community and also must undergo critical reflection of what is being represented. And John M. Chu, who's the director of that film, also this is the second chance that he's had to direct a community specific film, because he also directed Crazy Rich Asians, which was the first opportunity that a lot of us might have had the chance to see the Asian community represented in that way, which also came with a lot of controversy and backlash, as it should. So up until this year, only one woman has won an Oscar for Best Director. But this year, this is the 93rd Annual Academy Awards. Chloe Zhao wins the Best Director, which makes her the second woman who's ever won the award and the first woman of color yet to receive an Oscar. And also I want to shout out to Mia Neal and Jamaica Wilson, who both became the first Black women to win an Oscar in makeup and hairstyling. And then also, I really want to talk about the new Transformers movie that's coming out, which kind of feels like a family reunion. It's Dominic Fishbach is in it, and it's directed by Stephen Caple Jr. And he actually he's teaming up with rapper Toby Nigwe, who really is like just an opportunity to look at how culture is influencing all of the media that we're consuming. Like just like Tyrese and Ludacris have been in movies, we're seeing how fashion and music and film and television and playwriting all are intersecting and have contributed to the way that we experience film and television now. And it's like looking at the overlapping of culture and how all of these voices are symbiotic with each other. So no matter what it seems like we have achieved or the lack of what we've achieved up until now, it just keeps coming down to you, to me, to us, to putting our face on camera, putting our bodies on the line and using our voice to tell a story.
Thank you for that, Lily. We, every meetup, like to take 30 seconds as a moment of silence. And to this meetup, we would like to take a moment of silence for the unseen people of the industry, the stories that have been silenced, and the truths we have yet to put on screen. So we're going to take that moment of silence now. And if you have anyone you'd like to name, please share it in the chat. Okay, so thank you for that moment of silence, everyone. Before we have a panel with our amazing speakers here, we like to go through community guidelines. These guidelines are just a way in which the TMS team has sort of felt like we can facilitate really good conversation here. So we're going to go through these right now. Just before we get into them. So I'll start with the first two. The first ones we have is engagement is encouraged, right? So please raise your hand to add a comment or question. Just engage with us. We love having you on Zoom, and you're here for a reason. So please just engage. And oops, ouch, instead of, just oops, ouch. So say ouch if someone says something that hurts you, say oops, and genuinely apologize for the ways your intention did not match your impact. So instead of just sort of holding at that inside, please name if someone says anything that kind of ruffles your feathers the wrong way so we can have a conversation about it. And I'll pass it to the next person, CA.
Hey, everybody. So for the next rule, it says here to break the habit of over-apologizing amongst women, we say, I'm sexy or I'm sassy in lieu of I'm sorry. And the fourth, move in, move out. Are you someone who knows they take up a lot of space in conversation? Alternatively, do you prepare to listen and sometimes can't find the right moment to interject? Try to be mindful of these behaviors and move in and move out when needed. This helps other people do the same thing. And I don't know who's saying the next thing, so I can't call them out.
I think that's me.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Number 5 is identifiers. And name yours and respect others. Example, pronouns, racial identifiers. Number 6 is mean what you say. We can't control other members' responses, but we can make sure we're putting thought into our words and being held accountable if need be. And with that, I'm going to pass this on.
Hi, everyone. Going to read the next one, which is confidentiality. This is a safe space, so please share your learning, but not the other person's privacy. Please ask permission from the person before sharing content outside of the group here today. And also number 8, disagree with the idea, but not the person. This is a space for constructive dialogue. So please avoid making personal attacks and focus on I statements. And I will pass it to the next person.
Thanks. That's me. Number 9 is moments of growth. So as moderators of this discussion, we do see conflict as an opportunity for us all to share together and grow together. So we think that actually holding to these community agreements allows us to achieve that. So at this point, number 10 is really just a thumbs up if you agree to our community guidelines, and if you understand what we're talking about, and if you like them, if you have any suggestions, put them in the chat or reach out to us. We're always open to expanding them and shifting them. Awesome. So for the meetup today, we are really proud to present the panel that we have, who are content producers, and they've all had different pathways into their careers. And all 3 of our panelists have created their own media companies and platforms, and they're here today to share about their journey and what they've experienced. We have a direct relationship with all of our panelists, which is why we invited them. And we do acknowledge that the way that it ended up coming together with the way that we plan our meetups and the timing and the folks that we reach out to, it ended up being so that we do not have a woman on our panel today. That's really important for us to name because we are actually talking about representation in this way, and we are definitely falling short in a lot of ways. We want to recognize the women in the industry, especially Black, Indigenous women of color and gender nonconforming folks, and their contribution to the industry, as well as the stories that are being told and overlooked on a daily basis. We will definitely be highlighting this conversation more on our social media platforms and during Meetup 2.0. So this is another opportunity here. The meetup itself has been built mostly by a team of women, and the research and the preparation obviously has come from a feminist perspective, but we are definitely we haven't solidified our speaker for 2.0 that happens in 2 weeks on IG Live and also on our Clubhouse. So as we move through the meetup, we are definitely open for suggestions from y'all for who we should be reaching out to and whose voice we want to be highlighting as we continue to expand the conversation. And with that, I will hand it back to Ariel.
Thank you, Lily. So just a reminder to everyone, because we have such amazing speakers here with us today, that we're sure questions are going to pop up. I mean, you hear something and you're like, oh my gosh, what about this or that or this or that? Please drop all of your questions into the chat so our speakers can be answering them. We really do want to hear from you guys. This space is as much for you as it is for just, it's you, it's for you, it's for everyone who's here. So please utilize it and drop any questions in the chat. You can also private message any of the TMS team members your question if you want to remain anonymous, and we can put them in the chat for you or ask them ourselves. Or if you need anything else, feel free to reach out to us.
Okay. So without much ado, we are going to let the panelists introduce themselves so we can hear from everyone individually and get on with the talk today. Yeah, CA, you're the first person I see on my screen. So I am just going to, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, everybody. This is a lot of fun to be on. This is my second panel, actually. That's in the past 3 days. Pretty cool to be here. My name is C.A. Davis. I am the creator and host of A Lot of Thought podcast. I am a filmmaker, film editor, digital storyteller, and producer at Northwestern University, and of course, a content creator, a podcaster. So that's a very short, bridged version of who I am, and we'll get into deeper explanations of each of us in just a minute. So I'm going to name David. Oh, and sorry, I use he, him pronouns.
Hi, everybody. I am David Garcia, and I am pronoun neutral. So I go by he, she, they. It doesn't matter, just as long as you're not trying to be insulting toward me. I'm currently live streaming out of Philadelphia tonight, which is on Lenape land, and identify as mixed. So I have family that comes from Puerto Rico, and Spain, Mexico, Germany, and some native. And I currently work as media director for the Mixed Space. I am partner with Grayson Sky, and I run my own production company called Between Pictures. And I'm going to pass this on to Mars.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here this evening. My name is Maris Lidaka. I am Black and Latvian, identify as he, him pronouns. I am a full-time video editor at Kin Community, which is a diverse women's lifestyle company. And I'm also the founder of the Blended Future Project.
Thank you for introducing yourself. So tell us a bit more about you and also what inspired you to pursue your line of work. Like, what led you to create your own company?
Same order. I'll start by starting. So I'm Black, Filipino, and white Italian, and I grew up in a pretty white area in Indiana. Very early on, very aware of the racial dynamic or being othered, and so I had a lot of interest and inspiration in history and the civil rights movement. That meant a lot to me, and that kind of has been a core politic for me moving forward throughout life. Fast forward when I go to college, I got into media, I got into editing, and I just kept doing it. I was pretty good at it. I kept getting paid for it, so stuck to it. And then a couple years later, went down to Nashville, Tennessee, and that's where my documentary work really took off. I did a lot of short form editing for a couple of companies, a few narrative short films, mostly documentary, like I said, music videos, that type of stuff. It wasn't until later in Chicago, when I moved up to Chicago in 2015, when I really had the desire to, one, I woke up in terms of realizing how wrong I had been thinking through my own racial identity, and not even realizing, for instance, the racism that I was encountering throughout my entire life. And so when I did realize these things, that's when these two worlds kind of collided together for me. My love for history, my love for social justice, and racial justice and racial histories combined with media. And I made a short film in 2018 that I feel like really missed the mark in terms of getting to a point where I really was understanding myself, but also the reasons why I and mixed folks feel a certain way about ourselves. And what I mean by that is I wanted to talk more about history. I wanted to talk more about the systems that create the bodies or the categories to categorize bodies to the ends of capitalization off of those bodies. So that's when a lot of thought really kind of came together. And at first, it was a little bit essentializing of the so-called mixed experience. But when I started talking to academics, and of course I work at an academic institution, the more that I engaged with critical research, critical thinking, the more that I was like, oh, okay, my real interest is in synthesizing knowledge and telling stories out of that knowledge. And so a lot of thought today is really just that. It's taking critical race theory, comparative race studies, history, science studies, and a few sprinklings of personal, anecdotes, whether they're mine or guests. And I use that as a throughput to talk about contemporary questions about mixed raceness that, I had certainly gotten wrong even just a couple years ago, and trying to break down both for people who might identify as mixed, but also those who don't. And I'm really just trying to broaden the perspective of what mixed race even means, especially within storytelling and media. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, I guess we'll keep going the same order we established earlier. How did I get into media? I actually just grew up watching movies, and I read books, and I made little short films with my family since I was a kid. After some time, I went into school and I started studying photography and film. And I spent a lot of time actually studying philosophy and social studies as well on the side of what I was doing. But for the most part, I just wanted to get into film and just started making movies. So I moved out west for a little bit, a short period of time, and I was working on the West Coast, and I was reading scripts and doing post-production work. And eventually I decided the West Coast wasn't really for me, so I came back to the East. And that's when I started to basically spend a lot of time in New York and Philadelphia, just working on the indie film circuit, as well as any big shows that came into the city. So I did everything. PA, I worked in camera department. I even worked as an extra on a couple of big feature films before I started to actually work in Philadelphia, shooting music videos and short films. I eventually one day got a call from back from the West Coast, and they asked me would I be interested in directing some TV commercials for Walmart, and I said sure. So I started to do that, and then that's when I decided I wanted to start my own company. I noticed there were problems in the industry that I felt people were being mistreated. People of color and minorities were not getting the same job opportunities. There was also this, as Lily mentioned earlier, that filmmaking is kind of a boys' club. It's a very male-dominant industry. And I wanted to start a company not only so that I could tell stories with a group of like-minded people, but also to make a safer, more hospitable work environment for everybody, where people are paid fairly and we can have more reasonable work hours in the day. So instead of doing 18, 21-hour days, we can do at least 12 or 10-hour days on shoots.
So I'll try to make my long career succinct. I've been in the industry for about 20 years now. I first got interested. I've always kind of been interested in storytelling. And it wasn't until I was living overseas in Denmark where I finally figured out what my method of storytelling would be, which was film and visual media. So I returned back to the United States, to Chicago specifically, went to Columbia College, shout out to Columbia College, and graduated in 2002 and immediately started just working on any local production I could get my hands on. So that became reality TV shows that came into town. I had a stint as a production manager for the McDonald's Corporation, making just corporate videos and doing live events. And eventually, my last job before I left Chicago was shooting content that goes on your Sprint cell phone. It was for Sprint TV, and it was just music and sports news, which was kind of a hint to what my future career and also what the industry would be moving towards, which was digital. So that was in the shadow of the 2008 crash. So all the work dried up. So I moved out west because I knew some people out there, and then had to start over from the beginning. So started doing PA work again, assistant camera work, producing work, and eventually sort of worked my way up to a spot where I was comfortable. I could support myself in Los Angeles. And it was in the shadow of the 2016 election where I started seeing a quote from Toni Morrison at a conversation with her friend, who told her that it's not in the easy times, but in the rough times where artists have to go to work. So all throughout sort of my career, I had made my own projects on my own, but I sort of realized that it was for my own benefit. It was to feed my own ego and to sort of receive accolades that I felt as though I deserved, but I'd never actually spoken for anybody else. So I decided to make the switch to actually figure out who I could speak for using the tools of media and film creation that I learned through the past 20 years. And by creating my own work, I actually started to gather a little bit of momentum, and people started to recognize me not for, the job that I could fill, but for the skills and the ideas that I could bring, which is how I got the job at King Community as a video editor. It wasn't specifically for my technical knowledge of video editing. It was for my ability to tell a story and generally just be agreeable and easy to work with. And it was also at that same time where I decided that I needed to speak for people who looked like me, and also people in future generations who would have the same experience that I had growing up. Because I just recognized that that was going to be a more common experience. And if we don't start talking about it, and we still have the same outdated understanding of race and culture, that we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So at that point, I decided to start the Blended Future Project.
Thank you. Some everything that all three of you guys are saying, just like, chills. As an artist, I love this conversation. I love these conversations. So let's talk about the beginning of filmmaking, right? So thinking about Birth of a Nation, why film was created in the first place, and psychological impacts of film that's shown by the Kuleshov effect. I don't know if I said that correctly. Someone, one of our panelists might correct me, but can the three of you speak to that a little bit more and talk to us about the beginning? Let's go back to the beginning, shall we?
Yeah, if it's okay, could I kick it off with just before we talk about Birth of a Nation? I think it's really important to recognize the camera as a colonizing tool. So it was something that was a documenting device that, whether it was still frame and then eventually the moving picture, it was not a friendly device, right? I mean, the word shooting is associated with cameras for, in my opinion, a reason. And the reason is that in order to understand a people from a colonizer's perspective, documenting them visually is really is helpful, a helpful tool. So as I know David brought up Birth of a Nation, so I'm going to let him talk in just a second. But I think it's really important to recognize that the camera itself is a dominating tool, and as we move forward through the new world and in history and time, it becomes synonymous with propaganda, but also like just developing culture visually. So, David, I'll let you take it away from there.
Thank you. I also have to just bounce off of that, your last point, that the camera is essentially the equivalent of the pen, and that we can rewrite history with it, or we can tell untold stories. In the terms of rewriting history, there is Birth of a Nation, which is, I don't know how many people have actually seen it, but it is a 3-hour and 20-minute or so silent movie, which kind of goes into the Reconstruction era that followed the Civil War. What makes this movie notable is that it's, on the one hand, lauded for its innovative techniques with filmmaking, special effects, actors, like hundreds of extras in the shot. But then it's also based on the novel called The Klansman. So it's a very extremely racist movie that basically, in my opinion, acts as a propaganda tool for the Ku Klux Klan, which in this movie, they were based as the heroes that basically helped guide Reconstruction era America back into their version of progress. So in this movie, though, just to give you an insight into it, the black actors were portrayed as white actors in blackface, and the black actors were portrayed as, lustful, as uncivilized rapists, and they are shot down by Ku Klux Klan members in the movie. And it goes on for 3 hours like this. I believe it was in 1915 when President Woodrow Wilson actually viewed the movie. He said, quote, "It's like writing history of lightning, and my only regret is that it's so terribly true." And this is the first cinematic blockbuster in Hollywood in the early 1900s. This is a movie that made hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it basically helped to, you could argue, spark the second movement of the Ku Klux Klan. So this is what the power of the lens can do: retelling of history, rewriting a history with the lens. So there are a lot of pioneering cinematic techniques with this film, and I remember before we talked about the Kuleshov effect, and I'd like to just bounce this off to Mars and see if you want to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the best way to think about it is that we've always, as humans, have told stories. It's kind of how we get our sort of instructions for life. Like the most basic form of storytelling is sitting around a campfire, somebody told a story, and that's sort of to all the children who are also sitting around, and that informs them, what to be afraid of, what your values are, and how to operate in the world. So, and film is kind of just doing that on a mass scale. The Kuleshov effect was this before D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. The Russians were doing all sorts of like experiments, which was like sort of the basis for modern film editing, which they would take 3 images or 4. Usually it was a baby, it was a man, and a bowl of soup. And they would put these images in different sequences, and they would ask people, what they thought. And what they found out was that people would just invent their own stories of like what happened. Like if you showed, say, the baby, the man, and the bowl of soup, it was like, oh, that man is ignoring the baby, and he's really hungry at that because he's looking at that bowl of soup. So if you take that and extrapolate it through years and years and years, what film can do is basically sort of like pass down values through generations. Because we look at a film, we kind of, through editing, sort of fill in all the gaps that we don't see and sort of create our own story, empathize with this character that we're being shown because we're being shown an image in a certain way or a character in a certain way, and we don't empathize with another character in a certain way. So what film can do is create a sense of joy or fear, and then people, because we've been doing this for centuries, pass that down because you saw this movie and it had a great effect on you, so you show it to your child, and you sort of take the lessons you learned from that and you pass it down and you pass it down. So that is kind of the power of filmmaking and just storytelling in itself, which is why it's so important to have good representation in the stories that we're seeing and creating.
And I want to add a little bit more to that too. It's not just representation that matters. Well, there's a couple of things here. Like quite literally, Birth of a Nation, there's no opinion about it, right? It is a propaganda tool. It was made to essentially rebirth the Southern cultural, genocidal, racist traditions that were, attempted to got rid of after the Civil War. And it's really not a surprise that film technology, or technology as a whole, has racist tendencies built within the very things themselves, right? I mean, if you look at any medium, the majority that, is the white majority throughout American history will use that medium to benefit itself, whether it's writing, whether it's camera work, whether it's film. These are methods of, to Mars's point, passing down ideology and ensuring that systems of thinking remain intact. And this is something that's very, very literal with Birth of a Nation, because after the Civil War, white plantation owners needed to ensure that they could have workers to continue tilling the fields for cheap, right? And in many cases, that's where the carceral system was born. And it's in the portrayal of the Black freedman rapist, the mulatto statesman Silas Lynch, and the mulatto housekeeper, that literally is telling white people, beware of allowing Black people into society. They will rape you, they will hurt. I should have said content warning, right? They will harm you. And also, if you're mixed, then you're going to be ruled by these two, eugenic halves. One is an animal, right? A non-white, basically, animal, which is, they've used this term for all different racial groups, but specifically in this case, and most strongly for Black people. And then with the other half, the white half, you have ambition, and you have goals, and you have, you're articulate, you can talk as a statesman, and these things clash, right? And this is the danger of mixing blood, right? This is a very literal thing that is done with Birth of a Nation. And it continues. It continues in the most mundane ways throughout filmic history, through storytelling methods, through the people you see on screen, how you see them. So that's why it's not just about representation, right? It's not just about having Black, Asian, Latinx, brown people on screen, indigenous folks on screen. It's like, how are those people being portrayed? Are they being portrayed as savages, wilds, worth killing and not worth hearing? And same thing with women, right? Are they sexual objects? Are they just people that don't matter? So it's actually like, in order to really do justice to these histories, you have to actually use the medium against itself, and understand that camera work itself, and lighting itself, and even makeup and wardrobe, all of these things have messages tied to them culturally, through history, through time, and it's all deliberate. It's all very, very deliberate. So I think it's, with these things combined, Kuleshov, psychology, and just the use of propaganda throughout American history. These are not going away just because, or just if, more Black folks, more Asian folks, what have you, any racial group, if they win more Oscars, it's like, well, what was the movie that they made? What was the message of the film? With the clip that we saw, that was the portrayal, like her role was a portrayal of a mammy, which is in itself a racist role, right? She won an award for a racist role. And by the way, she was segregated from celebrating that award. So what is the victory there? The victory is, it's breaking ice, sure, but to what extent and to what ends is really what matters. So that's a little addition that I wanted to have there.
Yeah, and I also just want to touch on what CA mentioned, twofold. First off, about the mammy role. That is something that we've seen, this caricature of the subservient Black caretaker being portrayed in films throughout history, basically, and it's been recent too. Just like also with Birth of a Nation, kind of wrote the rules for the epic Hollywood narrative that we're still seeing the techniques that are pioneered in this movie today. The close-up, the use of extras, the cinematography techniques that were utilized for the first time in that movie are still being used today. That movie is still, and it's being studied in film school and criticized very necessarily because of its horrific content. But even the technology that we're basing our modern cinematography on comes from a racist propaganda film.
So as we are kind of circling and going through these topics and unpacking the industry and what the technical aspects are, and this goes back to what y'all have been talking about, the gatekeepers, the working conditions. It just makes me think about the titles, right? Like, what does it mean to be a producer? How can we deconstruct and democratize also the system that this industry is working within?
You want which one do you want me to hit first? You want me to you want to know? I mean, there's different types of producers. I mean, and they all do different things. And it also depends on the medium. Like, there's an executive producer, which if you're in a movie, you're the person who finds the money most of the time. But if you're in television, you're like the showrunner, the person who's like in charge of everything. Then you have your producers who can do a bunch of different tasks. Sometimes some of them actually honestly do nothing. And some of them are just holding the glue of every single production together. And then it kind of goes like on down the line. As far as kind of democratizing the process, it's kind of hard. Like, if you're talking about like going on set but democratizing that process, because of the nature of how it works, I mean, it's all kind of like based upon speed and getting a lot of things done in a short amount of time. Like, I know 12 hours sounds like a long time, but when you're actually shooting something, you'll be surprised how fast that time goes. It's kind of hard to democratize that process. I think probably the best way to do it is just to create a safer working environment where you're not shaming people, and where you're treating it more like we're here working together to accomplish a goal versus, which is especially on a lot of, mostly it's been a lot of reality productions that I've been on. It's like, here's the person at the top. He's above you. He's your superior. Treat him, because it's usually him, with deference and respect, and he can just treat you kind of any way that he feels like. I think that's kind of the way that we move forward, is creating a more respectful, friendly work environment. And that process is kind of already happening, because the gatekeepers that we used to have, like when I grew up, sort of digital and YouTube and all the different platforms that are coming about, are just sort of chipping away at that. Like, I remember I was working on a show called Summer Break. It was about teenagers going on summer break. It was on YouTube. And they would be like, we would have a celebrity that would go along with them, and anybody who was like the age of 16 and under would not care about the celebrity, but they were all over the kids who they saw on YouTube. So that's kind of how it's being democratized, whether the people who gatekeep like it or not.
Just to bounce off of that too, I feel like media production is democratized in a way that hasn't been seen in forever. With the advent of not only the iPhone with a digital camera, but also every person here who's with us, you have access to YouTube, you have access to Twitter, you have the ability to tell your stories and to use your phone to not only create a movie, but also to institute real policy changes, whether that's with recording an act of police brutality, or just being able to set up and run your own production the way that you want to, whether it's you're an influencer on Instagram or you're a YouTube filmmaker. I would encourage everyone here just to, think about that. You have so much power. Every single person here has so much power in their hands right now.
Yeah, I hear this question, and I think something that really, this answers like half of it, which is thinking about Raoul Peck and his latest HBO series, Exterminate All the Brutes. And this is a pretty important, in my opinion, pretty important document in cinema, because it's literally, I mean, it's like the name says, it's incredibly brutal, a brutalistic history over the past 400 or 500 years, talking about colonization, enslavement, but to also a more critical extent, thinking about media and media's use and the gatekeeping that happens when, say, one movie is made over another. I mean, Raoul said himself, he said, it's a miracle that this was even made. And the reason for that is because the critique that he has in the entire series is of the very world that gives us the modern, benefits of modern society that we all enjoy today, right? So he's talking about breaking down centuries of extermination, enslavement, and racial abuse in ways that, like I said before, really attacks the medium that he's operating within himself. And so I look at this and I'm like, I don't know, how the hell did it get made? It's like, how did he even get it through the door? And I haven't seen an interview that really addresses that out of him. But I think in terms of like what it means to be a producer for someone like Raoul Peck, who's interested in really turning the camera inwards on itself, it means that you have to be critical of the very fabric in which we all live, in ways that are pretty ugly and terrible, and there's so much to take from that series in terms of trying to find a way to deconstruct the system I can't even like find the right words for how powerful it is to just sit through 4 hours of content that really tries to destroy content through history, through contemporary and somewhat contemporary, like 1950s examples of film and media. And that also goes deeper into what we were saying earlier about the history of media, but also I see a comment here saying from Teresa, forgive me if I'm saying that name incorrectly, that mainstream media itself is still very racist. And this is really the point of someone like Raoul Peck, who is trying to use the camera to highlight the inconsistencies of Hollywood, which is supposed to be progressive, and yet stuff like what he's made is hardly ever made, if ever. So that gatekeeping is real, it's strong. And in terms of how can any of us little content producers do anything about it? It's, staying independent actually has you have a lot of power. Like to speak to what David's saying, I have power in not being paid by anybody to do the episodes for A Lot of Thought, because it's kind of a public initiative in a lot of ways. Meaning, no one will want to fund many of Raoul Peck-esque films, right? No one wants, it's not a happy thing to watch, but it's necessary. It's a necessary thing to watch. And so when money comes into the picture, it gets really, really muddy very quickly in terms of gatekeeping, the power we have individually and also as producers as a whole, whether it's a company or just a couple of people.
Yeah, also what CA touched on is that filmmaking it's still a business, and it's an industry that has commercial interests, and there are things that the studios are looking for profit. And if you actually look at the octopus, so to speak, the corporate octopus that owns the different studios and exhibition, the theaters and the networks, you'll see that there's a reason why they say it's a miracle that any movie ever gets made. let alone a movie that's very self-reflexive and critical of basically how still racist and misogynist a lot of our mainstream content is. And part of the reason why is like the industry is telling you, marketing is telling you like, this is what you should be watching. This is what you should be excited for. This is how a woman is supposed to look like. This is how a man's supposed to act like. And these are commercial interests that are still pushing a lot of these ideas on us because that's still what they think is going to sell tickets and get eyeballs on them.
Oh, such gold that's being dropped here. So we have a question from the audience for all three of our panelists. For those who've worked in the United States as well as abroad, what were some differences in work environment that you've noticed? And I do just want to call attention to the time. So we're trying to get through all these questions, but just really quickly, if anyone noticed any differences working abroad versus here in the United States, thinking about in the film industry in particular.
I'll just say real quick that I've really only worked abroad for American production companies. So the difference has been like very minor. You're required to employ a certain amount of locals, and that's about as far as I know. People who have worked abroad in other countries, especially ones in Europe, there's just certain parameters that you have. I think in France there's a 10-hour maximum workday requirement, so it kind of just depends on the country. But I can't really give a lot of insight into that.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to touch on is that you have something called French hours where you have 10-hour days instead of 18, 21-hour days for 5-6 days a week. So it's 10-hour days. You don't have lunch breaks, though. What you typically do is you grab food and you eat food while you're working, and you run to the bathroom when you can, but you still get the same amount of work done within fewer hours. So I can't really speak on how the union structures are different overseas than they are versus here, but I know that French hours are definitely a big thing. And there are a lot of film producers in the United States and in LA, in New York, that actually really want to push for livable hours so that people won't crash their cars driving home from being sleep deprived. And there's also another thing, payment. So I know that there's Pay Up Hollywood and Times Up Hollywood that's starting to happen here. And I don't know if those movements are happening overseas as well, if there are pay discrepancies or if actual pay is catching up to living standards, like a minimum wage that people can live off of. But I know that that's something that's also happening on the West Coast in the United States.
Thank you. I do just want to really quickly shout out the organization that we are donating to. Our team works really, really hard to create these meetups every month, so we really appreciate you all taking the time to be here with us. We believe in paying it forward, of course, and facilitating collaborations between organizations. And while our meetups are free, we do accept donations and give them to a different organization every month. We also double all of the donations we receive for that organization. So this month we are donating to the SIC Film School, who helps give young people access to education on the wonderful industry of creative storytelling through film. We are going to link our PayPal. We linked our PayPal in the chat already, so thank you in advance for your donations. Just another couple minutes for some other questions here. We have, can panelists comment on the importance of films like Sam Fetter's documentary Disclosure and or the works of writers like Laverne Cox and Janet Mock? So whoever wants to take that one, go ahead.
I unfortunately haven't seen that doc. I think I've heard of it. I'll check it out. But in terms of Laverne Cox, I think it's just very important that, and forget, I just want to make sure this is the person that I'm thinking of. Yeah, it's very important to have, especially now in a time where people meaning gatekeepers, are more accepting of transgender women, men, especially people of color. It's like, it's amazing to have writers like Laverne Cox. So I just, I can't really add a whole lot to the question other than like I'm here for it, and I think her work is great, both as an actor and as a writer. So it's incredibly important, and I'm really just happy to see that to speak about representation. That for her it's not just about representation. She's not just there. She's really saying something with the work that she does. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think for context, and guys, everyone correct me if I'm wrong, but Laverne Cox was in Orange is the New Black, correct?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, actually, I do love that show, and I love her work. And I also feel like we've not seen very many, trans actors who weren't misrepresented or misgendered. One thing I'm thinking of is Ace Ventura, the first Ace Ventura movie, where the antagonist is transgendered, and Jim Carrey's character has a psychotic breakdown, making physical contact with this person, and realizes that she is a he. And back in the 90s, that is supposed to be funny. Yeah, I remember even seeing that back then. I'm like, that's not funny. That's pretty offensive for me. But and I have thick skin. So I'm glad to see actresses like Laverne Cox are, creating her own content and writing and being seen and helping, film, like independent films, like I don't know if everyone's seen Tangerine, but films like that getting more recognition, or being just being good movies, and not just having a transgender person just to be poked at or prodded at or laughed at, but actually just telling a story about people.
I am also not familiar with the doc, but I am familiar with Laverne Cox's work. I think kind of the greater point that I wanted to bring up earlier is that the gatekeeping that we've been seeing, that I keep alluding to, the main gatekeeping is audience. Like, that is, the film industry and the TV industry had a lock hold on audience. If you wanted to get whatever you made in front of somebody, you had people that you had to go through. And I think kind of what David was referring to, that we now have the power and it's being democratized, that it's no longer required to go through these certain steps to find your audience, because we have the internet and we have different media platforms. You can now go and find your audience, and you can actually use that to build a better independent career that can support you and actually enable you to make the work that you want to make and tell the stories that both you want to see and you feel need to be seen without needing somebody else's permission to do so.
That's so real. We have just one more question that I just sort of want to just express. Panelists' thoughts on Tropic Thunder and its messages about Hollywood. What are we thinking?
Tropic Thunder is a problem, even though it tries to make fun of it. Hollywood, it's like still doing the things that Hollywood does. So, I mean, it's unfortunate that that they do a good job of the satire, because then it obscures what's still happening, which is Robert Downey Jr.'s blackface, obviously, but the portrayal of the Vietnamese population is, I mean, this is like textbook, xenophobic racism, especially when, it's, I will say that I love Tom Cruise being an absolute moronic American idiot, but other than that, I don't know. I actually haven't thought about Tropic Thunder in a while. So thanks for bringing it up. It's a problem. It's a problem.
I mean, it's a very like inside baseball kind of movie, and it's kind of hard when you're on the inside to like see how you look to the outside. So yeah, it is a problem, but a lot of those problems this is why you need to have new voices in the room, not only in front of the camera, but behind, because you're having one perspective and then you're trying to like make fun of your own perspective. It leads to issues down. No matter who you are, you need an outside perspective in order to really see yourself, is what I would say about Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, I've never actually seen it, but I read all about it. Partly because I thought, I never actually had a chance to see it, but I know about the blackface makeup, and it was used as satire. So I really can't comment on that one, except that I do 100% agree, Mars, with what you said, that it's kind of a call that we need more diverse directors as well in the room who are kind of overseeing this project, because on the one hand, it's like, and I think this is a question for everybody here is, what satire is okay, or what are the boundaries for taste, and what are we comfortable being offended by in our content? And I do feel like, especially when I'm watching some of the newer shows and movies, the director who did Moonlight, for one thing, totally different movie, or the TV show Euphoria on HBO. I feel like this is something like Tropic Thunder just reminds me, like it's probably it's been high time for a long time to get new voices behind the director's chair, and also writers as well, working on the scripts.
Thank you. So we have 13 minutes around before we're going to move on to our next part of this meetup, and we're going to play a fun cameo. That's a surprise for everyone. But we have a question for the panel. We've been talking about making your own content creators and such. So we're wondering if panelists have any advice for other creators out there who are doing this work and are stressed by it and sometimes need a mental break from pressure. Like, where do you want to go in moving into the next generation, and where is the future of movies and movie theaters going?
Well, I can tackle both of those. The future of movie theaters it's going to be kind of like a theme park. Like, you're noticing Disney is trying to start their own movie theater. They're releasing things day and day, and people were already not going to the theaters before the pandemic, and they're not going to theaters after the pandemic. So there needs to be a reason for you to actually not wait for streaming and actually go to the theater. So you're going to see like more, like I think for those of you in Chicago, you've been to like the music box, you can buy alcohol and actually sit down and drink your beer while you watch the movie. You'll see things more like that. You'll see, just trying to make it a little bit more exciting, but it won't be the holy grail for a filmmaker. Well, it'll be for the filmmaker because we like to see our work on screen. But as far as the business model, that's just going to be sort of one piece of the content distribution. And as far as making your own stuff, one thing to remember is this is a marathon, not a sprint. You don't have to become an Academy Award winner next week. Focus on what it is that you like to do, not what you want to get. Because a lot of times we think like, I need to win an Oscar, I need to win this award, I need that award. But what happens after you win that? So what is it that you like to do? Because a lot of people say they want to be filmmakers and content creators, and then when you start doing it, you find out that there's something else that you like to do a lot more than what you're actually doing. And also find people to collaborate with. This is a collaborative medium, and you may have a lot of skills, but you can't do everything. And you need to have more than just your own perspective whenever you're making anything. So find people to not only take the pressure off, but to also help lift you up and just make sure that you're keeping yourself sane.
I also just want to say that I do think in terms of like content distribution, I'm actually noticing a rise in the drive-in again. I don't know if any of y'all have been to the drive-in recently during the pandemic, but that's starting to come back. And I think that's it's not only great because it's a way for new theater owners just to kind of like establish their own space, but also it's going to be a new communal space, like literally for people just to come, and then you can appropriate it for different types of events. So I'm noticing out in Pennsylvania, there's one massive drive-in where they show new movies, they show old films, they have communal gatherings, barbecues, that sort of thing. So I think it's literally going to, the pandemic and also the rise of streaming has kind of gotten people itching to get outside almost in a strange way. I feel like we're going to see more big budget Hollywood blockbuster movies in theaters now, and people are going to be staying at home streaming movies that are going to be more like a slower burn, I guess you could say. And as for advice for creators, I also concur. This is 100%. This is a marathon. You just pace yourself. It's not a race. You network, get to know people, talk to people, and don't be afraid to reach out and ask someone, hey, how'd you do this? Like someone on Instagram, because like if you're on Twitter, if you're on Instagram, like you have access to so many people now, especially on Twitter and even on TikTok too. A lot of content creators on TikTok. And the other thing is, share with your friends, your family, and, get feedback, and then use your own network to help push your own work and get it seen.
Yeah, I can't really speak to trends and such. I'm kind of an outlier in that way. I kind of do my own thing. My head's not really in the same realm as perhaps David and Maris, but I want to add to what Maris said in terms of not just do what you enjoy doing, but I mean, really try to understand why you're getting involved. If you're content creating, why are you doing it? This is something that I only now really fully understand. As I said earlier, I was getting a lot wrong in the very beginnings of a lot of thought, but also just filmmaking in terms of like identity exploration, racial identity exploration. If you don't have a solid grasp as to why you're even working this hard, why you're struggling, then that's really the most important thing, right? And it's also just to say more about representation and identity work is like if you're really committed to trying to better what small part of the world that you are in or affect, then you got to challenge yourself and think outside the box of what is typically discussed, typically talked about, and ask what calls out to you outside the realms of, say, how, this is something that I'm speaking about myself, how I feel about being mixed, right? For me, there was a really, really sharp up ramp from this discussion of identity into, let's talk about systems of oppression which create identities that we then deal with in the contemporary, right? And this is a relatively, there are a couple of folks who are doing that type of work in the mixed genre of racial identity and histories, but for the most part, it's a good niche for me, and it makes a lot of sense, and it also speaks to Mars's point, what I really care about, which is social justice through education, which arguably you can educate people as long as you want, and sometimes they're just going to ignore it. But at the end of the day, it's still worth documenting stories of folks that are forgotten about, such as like Black natives or Vietnamese refugees who are mixed and came to the U.S. because there was a law that specifically allowed mixed people to come to the U.S. during the Vietnam War, which is pretty fucked up. Sorry, excuse me, language. So there's, in terms of identifying why you're doing what you're doing, try and really challenge yourself and be critical of what you're thinking and what you're doing. It can only pay off in the long term.
Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, yes, Mars, go jump in.
If I can add on to what CA was saying about go find your niche. Go niche, because you'll find even with like bigger production companies, they're looking for somebody who has a niche and area of expertise. So figure out whose problem does your work solve. There's a simple equation that I use, which is my work helps X achieve Y through Z. So what is the work that you are making? How are you helping somebody solve their problem? Because if you can position yourself as an expert that is solving somebody's particular problems through whatever medium that you work in, that will actually help you build a consistent career where you can define who you are rather than relying on somebody else to tell you who you're supposed to be.
Yes, I wrote that down. I wrote down, my work helps X achieve Y through Z. I love it. I wrote it down. I'm going to take it and keep it with me. Okay. Thank you so much to 3 of our amazing panelists here. Thank you so much for your answers and your prompts and everyone for sending in your questions. To close out this portion of our discussion today, we actually have a cameo. We've asked Lily's friend Michael, who's an actor and producer, to share with us what he values in his process of creating and consuming media. So we are going to pull up a little clip of him.
Hi, how are you? My name is I am an actor and producer based in Los Angeles. When I think about my values and the type of content and media that I gravitate towards, I think it's always rooted in some kind of truth, whether that truth be the truth of the story, the truth of the character, the truth of representation and what the world looks like. It's important, I think, as creatives to really anchor our work, no matter what the work may be, in a level of truth that speaks to all different kinds of levels, like an emotional truth, a spiritual truth. Like I said earlier, representation is super important to me. I think we live in a landscape now where there's opportunity for everyone to be seen, no matter where you come from. And that's one of the most powerful truths we have, our identity and who we are authentically. So that's why I'm so excited to be able to be a creative and a storyteller in this time, because I feel like there's a new type of ownership of our stories that's happening. So yeah, truth is the biggest thing I look for in content that I consume, in content that I produce, in projects and creative projects that I'm a part of as well. Yeah.
Before we do our whiteboard, we actually have a little bit of a surprise. We get to show a small segment of Maris's film that is coming out soon. And we just wanted to share this and look at what's being made right now.
It's been great hanging out with you tonight. And I hope you feel the same. Hey.
No, I'm fine. Nobody panic. I need a moment. Hey.
Hey.
I should probably.
What? Is now the time I get to call you on your bullshit? I know you're hiding shit. You know you're hiding shit. I just want to know why.
What about the shit that you're hiding? You don't hear me bringing that up.
Ooh, and what will happen next? We don't know. Unless you pre-order it. So that's what y'all should do. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Maris, for giving us a little exclusive look at your upcoming release film. We are going to now move into the whiteboard section of our meetup. So how you do this essentially is at the top of your screen or wherever the 3 buttons are. No, top of your screen, you can hit view options, and then there's a drop-down bar, and you can click annotate, and make notes on this whiteboard. You can draw pictures, you can draw hearts maybe, or write something. So essentially what this is for is just an opportunity for us to reflect on everything that was said in our breakout rooms, anything that's sticking with us from the meetup, quotes that we heard, anything that we're taking away. This is just a time to reflect on this whiteboard. So you can also feel free to take yourself off mute and shout out what you have heard, and we can also write it in for you if you're having a little trouble with the annotate section. I also want to call out that we are putting a meetup survey in the chat. Once again, please give us survey and feedback on what you thought of this event. And also we are going to seek gratitude. Let's put that down. Thank you, Sam. Love it. Gratitude. Okay, the 3 dots. Sorry, y'all. It's the view options at the top of your screen. So you have like a view options drop down button, and then you got annotate. If you go down, you can go down to annotate. We also have a fun interactive little Instagram story feedback that you can put up on your story, which is also linked in the chat. Once again, drop your socials. Gratitude. It's not just about representation, but also about how people are portrayed. Yes. Yes. There are certain things that I wrote down. All right, let's give it to the panelists. Panelists, what are some words or things that you would like people to take away from this event today?
If you are a creator, this is the best time to be one. You do not have to rely on the old traditions of the past of getting through the gatekeepers in order for you to find your audience and tell the stories that you want to tell. And also on the flip side, if you are not a creator, go and support the people who you found who are creating the content that you like. Leave them reviews on podcasts. I know CA's got a great podcast, a lot of thoughts. So please, everybody go to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5 stars and review for it. Also share the things that you see around with other people and just spread the word. All of us independents now we depend on you, our audience. That's who we create our work for, and that's what keeps us going. So help us help you.
Yes.
In production, one of the things that I've come to know is that mistakes are learning opportunities, and that whenever it comes to making film, you have the beauty and the ability to erase and rewrite your mistakes until you put it out there for the world to see. So you have so much power. I have to keep repeating that. Like, you have so much power, and this is a great time to be a content creator.
I love this power. Like, yes, artists have power. Just a reminder.
And to add to that, Toni Morrison didn't start writing, or rather wasn't published till she was 40, I believe. And Leslie Jones didn't join the cast of SNL until she was also, I think, almost 40. So it's never too late to do the things that you want to do. Find yourself, find your motivation, find your inspiration, find out what speaks to you, and get out there and do whatever you can to make it happen.
Yes. Writing that down. It's never too late to do what you want to do. Yes. And also, we were talking about this earlier before we started the meetup, but Vera Wang designed her first dress at 40 too. So it's really never too late to be an artist. Okay. Just community. If anyone else wants to populate this, it looks like there's a lot of stuff going up on there, so that's amazing. As we did mention before, TMS has a Facebook group to continue this conversation for fun. We have already put a question in the Facebook group regarding this meetup, so you can head on over to answer that if you want to just keep the conversation going. The question is, how do you feel the media/production agency has shifted from its origin to now? And so that's in the Facebook group, so you can go and answer that and continue this conversation there if you so choose. We also have a Meetup 2.0 that happens 2 weeks after the Meetup. So our Meetup 2.0 is going to be about this topic in 2 weeks' time. We are still looking for a speaker for that. So if you are interested in speaking on this topic or know someone who would like to speak on this topic, feel free to send us a DM or an email at the contact email that we have listed below. Next Meetup, we're talking all about stolen histories, colonized conflict in the Latin diaspora, to sort of honor Hispanic Heritage Month and also talk about why the term Hispanic is so not it anymore and never was. So feel free to look out for that. That should be up on our website soon, so you can RSVP to that. And as I said, we are accepting donations for our fundraiser. We've linked the PayPal in the chat. Once again, all proceeds for this meetup are going to go to the SIC Film School. And that is in the chat. So thank you everyone for being here.